I was expecting so much excitement.
Are y'all ready? Are we going live yet?
Yeah, I am.
Live on Instagram.
Okay, we're live on Facebook. Hey, y'all, welcome to Up in Your Business with Kerry McCoy. My guest today is Warwick Sabin. If you don't know what Up in Your Business with Kerry McCoy is, it's a radio show that becomes a podcast next week where we interview interesting people and talk about what they're doing, and they're all movers and shakers, and they're all successful. And today we have Warwick Sabin. He's running for mayor in the city of Little Rock, Arkansas.
Hi, everybody.
And he's running late. We're about to start in 1 minute, so get your chair. And he brought his baby
He's already our favorite.
Minute 9.
We got how long?
Minute 5.
Minute 5.
All right.
What's your name?
Hold on, I gotta get something.
Come back.
Not allowed.
Bye-bye.
Oh, inside. If you look inside.
Oh, inside. Okay, got it. Thank you very much.
This is already the
So if we've got a minute 5, let me tell you, if we've got a minute 5, let me tell you a little bit more. Warwick and I have known each other for a long time. I actually went to his wedding. Do you remember that? You probably
Of
don't
course
remember
I
that
do.
day. We got married on P. Allen Smith's, he got married, we didn't get married. I think Jessica would be a little upset. He got married to Jessica DeLoach on P. Allen Smith's farm. What's it called? Moss Mountain?
Moss Mountain Farm.
Moss Mountain.
You know
and
that.
I know, I couldn't remember for a second though. And there was this dog behind the fence. Remember that
I
dog?
do.
It's the cutest thing. It was so.
And all the animals
15.
broke as soon as we
I know,
set our
it's just
vows.
fabulous.
All right, get your headphones
All right,
on,
we're ready to
girl.
go in. I'll come back to y'all at the break. Get your phone off, Wart.
Be sure to turn the volume up all the way.
Oh, I don't have a computer up.
Sorry. Excuse me. Miss Arm?
Welcome to Up in Your Business with Kerry McCoy, a production of flagandbanner.com. Stay tuned to hear how you can get a copy of this program and other helpful documents. And now it's time for Kerry McCoy to get all up in your business.
Thank you, Tim. Like Tim said, I'm Kerry McCoy, and it's time for me to get up in your business. Before we start, I want to introduce the people at the table. We have who you just heard from, Tim Bowen, our technician, who will be managing the board and taking your calls. Say hello.
Hello, Tim.
And recording our show today to make the podcast available next week is our technician, Jesse. Thank you, Jesse.
No problem.
If right now you're sitting at your computer, you might want to watch us live on flagandbanner.com's Facebook page. That's flagandbanner.com. I'm waving to everybody on Instagram and Facebook. It's kind of fun to see what goes on behind the scenes and at the breaks because it's like a reality radio. This show, Up in Your Business with Kerry McCoy, began with entrepreneurs in mind, a platform for me, a small business owner, and a guest to pay forward our experiential knowledge in a conversational way. As with all new endeavors, it's had some unexpected outcomes. Like, this show has a wide appeal to everyone. And I mean everyone, not just business owners, because everyone is inspired by everyday people's American-made stories. My guest today is an American-made man. He is our Arkansas House of Representatives, representing the 33rd District, Congressman Warwick Sabin, who recently threw his hat into the ring as a candidate for mayor of Little Rock, Arkansas. Today we are going to find out about his life, his accomplishments, and what led a boy born in New York City to live and love Arkansas. If you're just tuning in for the first time, you may be asking yourself, what's this lady's story and why does she have a radio show? Well, Jim's here to tell you.
Thank you, Kerry. Over 40 years ago, and with only $400, Kerry McCoy founded Arkansas Flag and Banner. During the last 4 decades, the business has grown and changed dramatically, from door-to-door sales to telemarketing to mail order and catalog sales, and now Flag and Banner relies heavily on the internet, including our newest feature, live chatting. Each decade required a change in sales strategy and procedures. Her business and leadership knowledge grew with time and experience, as well as the confidence to branch out into multimedia marketing that began with our nonprofit Dreamland Ballroom, as well as our in-house publication, Brave Magazine, and this very radio show you're listening to right now. Each week on the show, you'll hear candid conversations between her and our guests about real-world experiences on a variety of businesses and topics that we hope you'll find interesting and inspiring. What I find encouraging about Kerry's story is that hard work really does pay off. Did you know that for 9 years while starting Flag and Banner, she supplemented her income with many part-time jobs? That just shows that persistence and perseverance will prevail. Today, Flag and Banner has 10 departments, and I have 25 coworkers, thus reminding us all that small businesses really are the fuel of our country's economic engine, and they empower people's lives. If you would like to ask Kerry a question or share your story, you can send an email to questions@upyourbusiness.org.
Thank you, Tim. My guest today is Arkansas House of Representative Warwick Sabin, who is running for city mayor of Little Rock, Arkansas. Warwick was born in New York City. In 1993, he was chosen to represent New York State at Boys Nation, where he met President Bill Clinton on the White House lawn in the Rose Garden, 30 years to the day of the story we all know, when Bill Clinton, the Arkansas delegate to Boys Nation, met President John F. Kennedy. Somehow, and today we'll find out how, Sabin ended up going to college at the University of Arkansas in Fayetteville, where he was elected president of the student body and graduated summa cum laude and valedictorian with a degree in, of course, political science. His education and accolades as a young man are far-reaching. In 1997, he won the Harry S. Truman Scholarship. In 1998, he was named to the USA Today Academic All-Star Team and won the Marshall Scholarship for Study Abroad at the University of Oxford. While in England, Sabin was a speechwriter for U.S. Ambassador Philip
Later.
for Philip Later. By the time he left Oxford in June of 2000, he had a Master's of Arts in philosophy, politics, and economics. His career life is just as impressive as his school days. After Oxford, Warwick moved to Washington, D.C. as a speechwriter for Congressman Marion Berry. It was there he was offered a job as Director of Development for the new Clinton Foundation in Arkansas. This would relocate him back in Arkansas. Since that move in 2002, he has had numerous empowerment positions. Many of you may remember him as the turnaround publisher of Oxford American Magazine. Today, while serving in the Arkansas House of Representatives, Warwick also has a day job as Senior Director of U.S. Programs at Winrock International, where he researches and implements programs aimed at helping rural America. It is a pleasure to welcome to the table a motivated man, a man of the people, Arkansas Congressman Warwick Sabin.
Thank you, Kerry. That's great.
It is great, isn't it? People always come here and they're kind of like, wow, you got a lot going on over there.
Yeah, it's actually a pretty exciting little environment right here. You get a lot of people here.
That's good. First things first, you grew up in New York City.
Uh-huh.
How did you want to do
Well, I mean, I always tell people there's a long story and a short story, and you kind of hit on the long story part of it because I got to meet Bill Clinton between my junior and senior high school, and that was pretty enlightening to me. I'd never met a politician before. You know, New York's a lot different than Arkansas. You don't get, at least I didn't get exposed to politics. I never even met my state representative or my state senator, much less a congressman or a governor or mayor or anything like that. So to get to meet the President of the United States was pretty remarkable for a 16-year-old. And when I went back for my senior year of high school, at the time I just really wanted to go to an Ivy League school, and I worked really hard, you know, on my grades. But I got a lot of, go ahead.
When you went back to where?
For my senior year of high school.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, just because, you know, I met Bill Clinton during the
So
summer.
you got back to your senior year in high school.
Uh-huh. And then I was getting a lot of nice scholarship offers from different schools around the country. And one of them was Arkansas. And I was like, well, that's where Bill Clinton's from. I really like him, and so I bet I'd like that place. So they were offering me a trip to visit Fayetteville, and I thought, you know, I'd like to check it out. And so I took the trip. And the truth is, I mean, I just fell in love with Fayetteville from the moment I got there. And even more importantly, I met a woman named Diane Blair, who you probably maybe knew at one point. She was a political science professor up there and been involved in so many different projects here in Arkansas. And she and I really hit it off. And she said, you know, if you come to school here, you know, I'll be your advisor. You can work at the White House in the summers, because she was good friends with the Clintons. And so, I mean, it was really more of a heart choice than a head choice for me, because it just felt right in a way that I still can't even explain to this day. But I never looked back and decided to go to school, even though everybody back in New York was kind of wondering what was going on.
Yeah, because you're probably a straight A student in New York City, and
Right.
you're going to go to Podunk, Arkansas, they thought,
Right.
and into the mountains of the Ozarks.
Mm-hmm. that was kind of what it was like. I mean, that's what they thought. But, you know, I'll tell you, I was the valedictorian in my high school, and when I gave my speech, kind of, you know, as a, what's the polite way to put it, as a kind of a, oh, I don't know.
In your face?
In your face, thank you, kind of thing. I quoted Fulbright, and I quoted Clinton, I quoted all these Arkansans in my speech when I was graduating, because, you know, everybody, again, thought I was a little nutty to come down here, but it's been the best thing I've ever done.
Oh, we're so glad you did. Your dad's an artist in New York, right?
That's
I
right.
met your dad at your wedding.
Yeah.
Charming.
Good guy. Yeah.
Both your parents are charming.
Yeah, I'm a lucky guy. I've got great parents and a great brother and sister too.
Does he do that for a living? Does he get paid? Does he get paid?
Yeah, I mean, you know, when he started out, kind of like you, he had to have a bunch of part-time jobs because, you know, he had actually gotten a law degree and he had been a lawyer and then kind of decided, I guess right around the time he was about 30 years old, that he wanted to be an artist. And so he definitely had to make ends meet at first, but then eventually kind of broke through. And, you know, as I was growing up, that's what he did for a living.
So there's two of you gentlemen in your family that make decisions on the heart.
That's a good point. That's a good point. Yeah, I mean, it's not all heart. I mean, I think that, you know, there's, you know, obviously thinking through what you're going to do, but I think you do have to be willing to take risks and kind of follow your dreams too.
That's exactly right. That's the sign of all successful people.
Mhm.
It's the land of opportunity in Arkansas too, don't you think?
I've always thought that from the moment I got here, and I think, you know, sometimes we don't realize how blessed we are to be able to have the access that we have to people. I mean, you know, when you mentioned your experience, you're kind of paying it forward. You know, you're using everything that you learned and helping other people figure out how they can do the same kind of things. And I found that exists everywhere in Arkansas, that nobody will tell you that they won't sit down and talk to you, and a lot of people become mentors and they help again, pay it forward and bring other people up behind them.
While you were at the University of Arkansas, you campaigned to have all the schools in the University of Arkansas system officially observe the federal holiday that honors Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.
That's right. And you want to know why or how?
Yeah.
So,
I mean, how old are you? 19?
well, I mean, by the time I was student body president, I guess I was 20. But, you know, I'd arrived in Fayetteville for my freshman year, and, you know, we weren't celebrating Martin Luther King Day that freshman year at college in 1994, 95.
But you did up in New York?
Yes, I grew up, you know, we had the holiday. I mean, Arkansas, I found out, was one of the only states in the country that didn't celebrate it. And, you know, I thought that was odd for two reasons. One is it didn't correspond with what I knew about the people from Arkansas that I met who, you know, really were very tolerant and accepting. And so the image that the state had, because it didn't celebrate the holiday, to me didn't correspond with, you know, the people. And so it gives us a bad reputation, makes us look bad. And number two, the university itself had this really good reputation. It was the first Southern university that admitted an African American student back in 1948 when it admitted Silas Hunt into the law school. So, and a lot of people still don't know that to this day. So, you know, I was like, okay, the university's got this great reputation, and it actually was very progressive when it comes to that particular issue. So why aren't we commemorating the main civil rights leader of our nation's history? And so when I got to be student body president, I made that a big part of my platform. And by the way, another thing that occurred to me was, you know, knowing what I knew by then about how African American students felt at the University of Arkansas. You know, I learned from talking to my friends that, you know, Fayetteville was a very different place. Lily white, barely any African Americans, especially back in the 90s. There's hardly anybody there. So we really should be bending over backwards to do everything we can to make the place more welcoming.
Yeah.
And by not commemorating Martin Luther King Day, to me, it just felt like we were not doing that.
You also became the president of the Young Democrats in Fayetteville.
Yeah, that was before I was student body president.
So you always knew that you wanted to be in politics, I guess.
Well, yes and no. I mean, to be honest with you, it was a weird thing because when I was a kid, I loved to write, and so I thought I would definitely be in journalism. And this is like a theme that has repeated itself throughout my life because first thing I did when I arrived at Fayetteville was I signed up to write for the newspaper, and that's what I did. I wrote for the newspaper the first couple of years, and I think I got pressed into getting into student government because my fraternity house needed a representative, and nobody wanted to do it. And they're like, "Where do you do it?" So I did it.
You're an overachiever. You do it.
Well, basically, and so they you know, had me in there, and then the next thing I know, you know, a couple of years later, I'm running for student body president. But you know, this has happened over and over again with me. Every time I've, you know, basically try to get into journalism and writing, something else kind of sidelines me. But you know, I did write for the Arkansas Times, as we'll probably get to, and I did get to publish the Oxford American. But
You have a theme of writing. When I was reading about you, you have a definite theme of writing, and I kind of wondered why you were a politician. I can't believe you already got to that, because I was like, he's a writer. Why is he a politician?
It just keeps kind of happening.
You can't help it. I guess it's in your destiny.
Well, we'll see.
So you ended up getting grants and getting to go to Oxford.
Right.
And tell us about that. And over there you were a writer. You were a speech writer for the U.S. Ambassador Philip Blair.
Yeah, that was really neat. I mean, you know, and that happened again because I was trying to get into journalism. What had happened was I was over there, and for my first year in Oxford, I actually applied to have an internship at Foreign Affairs magazine for the summer in between my first and second years. And that's a very hard internship to get because there's only one of them. And I'll tell you a funny story that's actually very Arkansas related. I had applied for that, and even being, you know, Marshall Scholar at Oxford and everything, apparently my application got thrown in the trash immediately because they saw University of Arkansas on it. And they just thought, no way, this guy can do it. The same day they threw my application out, without me even knowing, Mac McCoy, who I worked for before, apparently he took it upon himself, didn't even tell me to do this, to call over there to recommend me. And he reached the guy that had thrown my application in the trash and just said, hey, I'm Mac McCoy, and I just think you should, you know, give consideration to this guy Warwick. And so the guy fished my application out of the garbage can. And long story short, after an interview and all that, I got the internship. So I, you know, get this journalism internship, and then my second year at Oxford, I'm looking to kind of find a journalism job, and I'm talking to the bureau chief of Time Magazine in London and all that, and apparently he ran into the ambassador one day and said, hey, I know this guy, you know, I know you're looking for a speechwriter, and next thing you know, I had an interview and a chance to do that, and that was really neat because I got to work in the embassy in London, and it was a really hard time though because I was getting up at like 4 in the morning to walk across Oxford to catch the train to London because I had to be at the embassy by 7:30 in the morning, and I would do that work all day and then come back and do my studies, and so it was.
Do you need a lot of
busy.
sleep?
No, I don't. You see, I got this big coffee in front of me.
I do see that.
I live on coffee. I don't sleep much, but I love it. I love everything I get to do, and I feel lucky to do it.
Wow, this is a great place to take a break. Every person I know that's successful just works hard. I mean, there is no secret. Well,
That's true.
I mean, there's some secrets, but that's the number one. When we come back, we'll continue our conversation with Warwick Sabin, Senior Director of U.S. Programs at Winrock International and Arkansas's 33rd District House of Representatives. More recently, Warwick put his name on the ballot as Little Rock, Arkansas's candidate for mayor in the November 2018 upcoming election. We'll talk more about that after the break. And at the bottom of the hour, we'll be taking calls for this radio show, 88.3 FM KABF, the voice of the people. So listen and get your questions ready.
You're listening to Up in Your Business with Kerry McCoy, a production of flagandbanner.com. If you miss any part of the show or want to learn more about Up in Your Business, go to flagandbanner.com and click Radio Show. Or you can subscribe through YouTube, iTunes, SoundCloud, simply by searching for flagandbanner.com. Lots of listening options. We'll be right back.
Turn the music up, Tim.
So I didn't get to meet all of you. I'm Warwick.
Matthew.
Nice to meet you, Matthew.
Nice to meet you, Warwick.
Hi, I'm Adrian.
Adrian.
Nice to meet you, Warren. Hi,
And
Arwen.
Warwick.
So everybody in this room works for Arkansas Flag and Banner.
Wow.
Except
Great.
for him.
That's him.
Tim, he works, he's a subcontractor for Arkansas
Okay.
Flag.
Good to meet you.
So Tim is a purchasing agent.
Okay.
Matthew works in graphics and is my middle son. Arwen is our webmaster, what they used to call him. What are you now?
I like webmaster.
She's our webmaster. She's
I'm
a
jack of all trades.
yes,
Okay.
really,
Yes.
exactly.
Which is what I called you on Instagram, actually, was a jack of all trades.
And then Adrian runs the showroom downstairs.
You got it.
So
Nice.
she's going to help me. But it's a small business. Everybody does everything.
Of course.
But that's our. And then on Fridays, this is what we do.
That's fun.
Everybody
It's
takes
fun.
a couple of hours to come play with Kerry.
Yes.
Oh, I love y'all. All right, we ready to go back in?
Oh,
We
yeah.
got a lot to talk
That's
about.
quick. All right.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, our breaks aren't very long.
You gonna put us right there? How do I look, Maddie? Hey,
Yeah,
we're gonna put you right there. You're listening to Up in Your Business with me, Kerry McCoy. I'm speaking today with Senior Director of U.S. Programs at Winrock International and Arkansas Congressman Warwick Sabin. He is running for City Mayor of Little Rock, Arkansas in the November 2018 election. Okay, let's pick up where we left off. We talked about how this New York guy got to the Arkansas via the University of Arkansas at Fayetteville. Then you went to Oxford and was a speechwriter over there. Now you've graduated from college with a degree in a master in philosophy, politics, and economics. You've been just killing it in your college career, and it's time for you to get a real job.
Yes,
As if those weren't all real jobs, they were. As fate takes you to Washington, D.C. as a speechwriter for Congressman Marion Berry. Is that what you wanted?
Well, I mean, it's funny because, the job was offered to me and it seemed like a right thing to do because the ambassador I was working for in London, his term was going to end at the end of that year. This was 2000, and so, Clinton was immediately in office. And I love the idea of, number one, working for an Arkansas congressman because I'd be able to stay connected to the state, and especially the area that Congressman Berry represented because it was the Delta part of Arkansas. And for me, I mean, that's, again, we're working there now at Winrock, and I love the culture of the Delta, and I love, everything about the history of the Delta, but, obviously the economy needs help. And so for me, I really was looking forward to the opportunity to be part of, trying to do what I could to help as part of the political system and also learn more about it. So I was excited to take that job.
Did you apply for it, or did they reach out to you?
They reached out to me.
Well, isn't that good? When people start calling you and going, hey, I've got a job, you want it?
Yeah.
So you met Bill Clinton as, when you were a New York delegate in Boys Nation. Didn't you remember you?
I mean, I'm sure that he probably said he did. I don't know if he did or he didn't, but he's kind of got notorious for having an amazing memory, so he very well might have. Yes, ma'am.
You can run into him. He's notorious for remembering people's names.
It's amazing.
It's
I don't know
weird.
that anybody else can do that.
I took that Dale Carnegie course. It didn't work for me. To remember people's names and did everybody take that course? No? Did you take that course?
I never took it. No.
No, it's about how to remember people's names. So talk about the years that you were in Washington, D.C. You were only there for 2 years.
Yeah, but it was great because I loved working for Congressman Berry. I learned a ton, being on Capitol Hill and being part of everything that happened there. Unfortunately, while I was there, the September 11th attacks happened, and so of course I'll never forget that.
You were in New York during that?
Well, I was in D.C.
Or D.C.
And of course, it was pretty crazy even that day. I mean, I'll never forget, and we don't have to go through all the details, but the Pentagon was attacked, and we were evacuated out of our offices there, and then 2 days later, there was the anthrax incident, and I don't know if some of your listeners are old enough to remember this, but that somebody had mailed anthrax to Capitol Hill, and they basically shut down all the offices for really a couple months, and so there wasn't any opportunity to go to work there. But during that time, I ended up coming back to Arkansas temporarily to manage a congressional campaign for my friend Mike Haythorne, who was running up in Northwest Arkansas, and so I did that. It was a special election, so it was basically from September until Thanksgiving. And so I was there, and then I went back to D.C., but then not too long after that, I was offered the job to be Director of Development for the Clinton Foundation. So
someone came and offered you a job again?
Yes.
See, that's why you should work hard all the time. You never know who's watching. You
That's
never
true.
know who's watching. So
That's
you offered
true.
another job to move back to Arkansas, and you jumped at it.
I absolutely did. I mean, President Clinton was starting his foundation. The goal of the foundation was obviously to, do the programs in the areas that he cared about, but also to build a presidential library at the time. And
So it hadn't been built yet.
no, in
You were
fact,
one of the founders.
that's right. So there were originally 3 employees of the Clinton Foundation: Stephanie Street, Shannon Butler, who's now Shannon Butler Dixon, and myself.
What about Skip Rhodes?
Skip actually was not an employee. He was, I think, on the board, but not an employee of the foundation.
Oh, I see.
Mm-hmm.
And you stayed there?
I was there through 2004 when the library opened, and then I finally decided I wanted to fulfill my journalism craving, and so I went over to the Arkansas Times as an associate editor, which was an awesome experience because I got to write, whether it was cover stories, I had a weekly opinion column. I started the blog that's on the Arkansas Times website, because we got to revamp the website at the time, and I just loved it. I loved writing and covering issues and being involved in that kind of part of public discourse.
How much do you like to write a day? Or how much do you write a day?
I mean, I probably don't write as much as I'd like to, just because I'm so very busy right now with so many things. But I still, even for my campaign purposes, I write up a lot of things, and You can ask the people who kind of work with me that I kind of prefer to write stuff up myself so that it's in my own words and it's my own thoughts. And
Sounds like it.
yeah, I mean, it just communication to me is just so important and something that a lot of people take for granted. And communication is also a two-way street. I mean, it's not just about you telling people things. You need to be listening to people.
Communication is probably more about listening
Yes.
than talking, which is taking me 60 years to figure out. It's true. So you are in your dream job, but you leave.
I did. I left it.
You're working for the Arkansas Times newspaper, writing all the time, loving it. I can see it in your face.
Oh yeah, no, it was fantastic. I mean, there were a couple reasons why, I decided I kind of needed to make a change after a few years there. But again, I did get offered a job to work over at UCA to kind of direct their communications, and I enjoyed that part of it, and that's actually what led right into the Oxford American, because at the time, the Oxford American was based at UCA.
Oh, that's right.
And I'll never forget this, but one day I was just working, and somebody walked in my office and said, hey, the Oxford American is bankrupt and in debt because it's been embezzled from, and you like the magazine, don't you? And I'm like, yeah, of course I do. Like, well, will you just kind of take it over and try to fix it and just figure it out? And I'd never done, anything like that before. I'd always been on the writing side, but never on the business side of publishing. But I just said yes, because I really didn't know even what that meant, and just kind of got into it. But, as you know, the Oxford American has a fantastic staff, a great reputation. People love the magazine. I'd always loved it just because I'd subscribed to it since I was, I think, a freshman in college, and just loved it so much. And, I just took it as a challenge to try to figure out, okay, what's the deal here? How can we get it going? And to make a very, very long story short, we were able to overcome that initial challenge through, raising money and other things. But then it was about really coming up with a business model that would work. And at the time, there were two things working against us. Number one, when I took over the magazine, it was 2008, so we were just going into a big recession.
Oh, wow, yeah.
But then, of course, also print publishing was going through its most difficult period because, advertising was being cut, circulation was being cut, the whole transformation to digital.
Everybody's come to their senses since then.
I think so. I think things have kind of evened out now, but it was really bad at the time.
It was.
But like I said, we had a great staff and good people. And what we started to learn was that the brand of the magazine, sort of its identity, was so valuable because, again, people cared about it so much, they trusted it. It was also very unique because it represented really the best of Southern culture, at a very kind of high level, whether you're talking about writing or music or art or photography or food or any of that kind of stuff. So we started doing events in all different places where people could come experience what they were reading about in the magazine. So they could come taste the food, hear a band, meet a writer and listen to the writer read their work, or see the photography, the art. And we were doing this in places like New Orleans, Atlanta, Nashville, even New York City, all these places. And they were very successful. And we were actually, our net profit, so to speak, from those events was very substantial because of the sponsorships we were getting and all that. So one day I was saying, well, gosh, what if we could do this 365 days a year? What if we could have our own venue where we were doing music and people were eating and, experiencing all this culture all the time? And that's where the idea for South on Main came from. And so I applied for a grant, and we won the first ever Art Place grant that's ever been awarded in the state of Arkansas, and it was to renovate the old Juanita's buildings on Main Street. And I obsessed over, every detail of that, as you may remember, Kerry, because you had your own renovation project going for a long, long time. And we got that done, and we opened up, the restaurant and got the programming going. And I'm just so proud of that to this day because Oxford American is the only magazine in the country that has its own venue. And it's a very unique concept. It's right on Main Street, in South Main, part of Little Rock. And I think it's contributed a lot to the revitalization of this neighborhood. I think it contributes so much to the culture. And obviously it's also helped to stand up the Oxford American brand, which was the whole point to begin with.
And it's everything that you said at the beginning of the show that you loved about Arkansas. You loved the culture, and you felt like it had this feeling about it that other states don't realize. And so now you're able to communicate that to lots of people through your magazine, and then you branched out through other forms of advertising, like you just said. through trade shows, I guess, or venues that you went and did in?
We just went and created the events ourselves.
just
I mean,
created
you know
the
Ray
events.
and Kathleen and all them.
Oh,
I mean,
yeah.
they used to pack up the van and
Mhm.
fill it up, and I mean, we had a lot of fun.
You had a
It was a
great time.
lot of work, but
I
it was a lot of fun because we were hanging out with, I mean, musicians and artists and chefs and all this, and everybody's just there to say, hey, the South kicks butt. I always used to say, you go outside of the United States and you ask people about American culture, inevitably they are going to talk about Southern culture because they're going to talk about barbecue and fried chicken, they're going to talk about blues or jazz, they're going to talk about Faulkner or Welty, or it's always going to be a Southerner. So like
Never thought about that.
we define American culture to the rest of the
Never
world.
thought about that. They do always ask me about Texas.
Well, that's the other thing. We're gonna let that one slide, but really, I think Southern culture is what it really stands out to people when they're looking at the United States of America, where we define the culture.
Interesting. I never ever thought about that. So then you leave Oxford, America, which I'm shocked by, again, looking at your face and your passion about it. So you've left two jobs that you are in love with, and now you started the Arkansas Regional Innovation Hub
Yep.
in North Little Rock.
Yeah, in North Little Rock, right across the street from Verizon.
And what made that transition?
Well, I mean, there were a few things. So, and let's sort of just definitely be frank about stuff. I mean, I've had these great opportunities and I love them. But sometimes when you're doing work at the intensity level that, I tend to do things, and you're also dealing with creative people and all that, I mean, 1 year it's kind of like a dog's life. Like 1 year is like 10 years. And
That's so true.
And on top of that, I mean, you may remember at the Oxford American, we went through, this turmoil with our editor and,
Oh, yeah.
and there were just all these things. So, I did 5 years of taking the magazine from bankruptcy, creating South on Main,
During
getting
a
through.
recession, during a business model change in print.
Sure.
Yeah, during those toughest times.
So 5 years felt longer than 5 years, I think. So I was definitely ready to do something kind of different. And the Regional Innovation Hub came out of the idea that, by that time I was in the legislature because I'd gotten elected in 2012.
Oh, you had? Okay.
And so I've been seeing all this stuff around the country that I thought was really interesting because, in essence, all of these big cities had what were called co-working spaces where entrepreneurs were getting access to what they needed to start businesses. There were these things called maker spaces where people were getting access to very advanced technology and other things they needed to prototype inventions and create new products. There were these arts cooperatives where people could get access again to the equipment and other things they needed to do art. And I'm like, we don't have any of those things here. So the idea was, what if we could kind of create one facility that had all three of those things in it? And, because basically we needed to catch up. And so, to make a long story short, that's what I was able to do. We were able to take this old 100-year-old warehouse that was sitting there empty in downtown North Little Rock.
You put in technology, arts, and what
Entrepreneurship and co-working, yeah. And it was terrific because in a very short period of time I was able to sort of raise the money and get that whole thing set up. And it's been a terrific addition. And one of the things that I wasn't expecting when I started was that we were going to have so much stuff for kids. Because at first what I was thinking about was adult entrepreneurs, people who were, again, starting businesses or creating new products. But the second we got the doors open in that place, we had parents and teachers and kids and principals, all these different people saying, hey, are you going to have anything for the kids? Because we don't know how to get them exposed to 3D printing or computer coding or all these other things. And we were like, well, yeah, let's do that. So we did after school programs and school field trips and summer camps and coding workshops and robotics competitions. And the place now, it's 50-50 kids and adults, which is a really neat and again unique thing. Like in the United States, there's not a facility that has all the things we have under one roof, nor is there a facility that does it for both adults and youth.
Wow, you are such a out-of-the-box thinker. And now you've learned how to be a teacher and educator.
Well, sorry, I wouldn't claim. I think a lot of what I do, though, is kind of create the environment for other people to do what they do well.
And this led you to become a director at the Winrock International because they ended up purchasing it, I think.
In essence, yes. I mean, they basically...
They liked it, they saw it.
That's right. They actually came to us, and they do... So Winrock does a lot of work internationally, and a lot of their work similarly is about, economic empowerment and trying to help people in all these, in essence, third world countries. And so we were a model that they really were interested in because they figured, you know, if it could work here, it could work in Asia and Africa and other places like that.
So they came in and, what did they do, purchase the nonprofit, or how do you do it?
So
You just assign it over to them? or-
In essence, yeah. I mean, I think we called it a combination. You know, you could call it an absorption, but in essence, you know, instead of the hub having to exist by itself as a, you know, nonprofit entity and having to raise its own money and all that, it became part of Winrock. And so,
They
in
funded
essence,
it.
yeah, and it wasn't the first time Winrock had done that. There are a couple of other entities, the American Carbon Registry, Winrock had absorbed, as well as a thing called the Wallace Center that helps people create local food systems and all of that. So it wasn't the first time they'd done that.
And then you left that job at the hub and went to work for Winrock.
Yes, although, you know, the hub is still sort of part of a portfolio of programs under
Under you.
our domestic programs, yes.
So you're still got your finger in the pie.
Yeah, so I mean, I do what I can to help and make sure, but we've got great people over there too, so that's the other thing. I don't have to, you know, be in the mix in such a micromanaging way because we've got great people.
That's
there.
the strength of a true leader, is to be able to teach to somebody else and move up, and then teach to somebody else and then move up. I mean, that everybody that comes in here is a teacher.
Well, and I think, and you probably can relate to this, but I think the best thing you can do is create a situation where if, God forbid, something happened to you tomorrow, that everything would be just fine.
Absolutely.
Mhm.
Some people get that kind of backwards. They're like, I want to be everything and I don't want anybody to be able to do what I can do because it's job security. And it's exactly the opposite. The more you teach and train, the more you move up. And if you don't do that, you'll just stagnant right there.
That's right.
All right, this is a great place to take a break. When we come back, we will continue our conversation with Congressman Warwick Sabin, Senior Director of U.S. Programs at Winrock International and Arkansas's 33rd District House of Representatives. He is also a candidate in the November 2018 upcoming election for City Mayor of Little Rock, Arkansas. We are going to talk about that when we come back after the break. And we'll be taking calls on KABF 88.3 FM, the voice of the people, right after this break tune. We'll give you the numbers, so get your questions ready.
You're listening to Up in Your Business with Kerry McCoy. If you miss any part of this show or want to learn more about Up in Your Business, go to flagandbanner.com and click on Radio Show. Or you can subscribe through YouTube, iTunes, SoundCloud, and more simply by searching Flag and Banner. Lots of listening options. We'll be right back with the phone number for calling in.
Flag and Banner is proud to underwrite.
I love your story. It's so consistent and cohesive. My guest last week was just all over the board. I had the hardest time keeping up.
But it was
with
somebody from New York, right? Didn't you say?
It was. I got two people from here right back to back.
Who was it?
Madonna.
Madonna Badger, who lost her son, who owns the Badger Winters, at the Badger Winters Ad Agency in New York City. And in 2011, she lost her son, daughters, and her three daughters, and her both parents in the hospital on
Oh my
Christmas Eve.
God.
Don't you remember that?
Now that you say that, I do.
Well, she came here because her roommate was in college, was from Arkansas. And she called up Kate Aspen, her roommate, and came
Oh, I
down.
know Kate.
That's when she lived with undercover for a year in Arkansas, the UAMS rehabilitated her. She came out and talked about it. You should listen to the show.
Oh my goodness.
She's done a TED Talk. She's done, and she's the one who's done the new campaign, Women Not Objects. Have you listened to her?
No, I don't know that. But
It's kind of a pre-me too.
All right, we got 10 seconds.
All right.
The correct department works to help you in department store variety. Open to the public Monday through Friday, 8 to 5:30, and Saturday 10 to 4.
You're listening to Up in Your Business with me, Kerry McCoy. I'm speaking today with Senior Director of U.S. Programs at Winrock International and Arkansas Congressman Warwick Sabin, who is running for City Mayor of Little Rock in Arkansas in the November 28th election. If you've got questions or think you have a question, write this number down.
The number to call is 501-433-0088.
Say it again, Tim.
That is 501-433-0088.
And if you're shy, you can send an email, and Arlen's going to help me watch my email, right? Okay.
And that email is questions@upyourbusiness.org.
And that's questions with an S. When we left, we were talking about you've gone to work for Winrock International, and you're over the Delta. You kind of organized, what what do you kind of, you're director of,
Well, my title is Director of U.S. Programs, and that's kind of the domestic work that Winrock does here in the U.S. But a lot of our work is just driven around community and economic development in rural areas. And, you know, it's something I talk about a lot because, you know, we have a lot of efforts going on in urban areas around the country that are supported pretty strongly, but our rural areas are really left out. And if you look at all the disparities in our country, whether it's economic, whether it's educational, whether it's health, even the political divide in our country, when you look at the map of red and blue, it tends to pretty much follow rural versus urban. And I think that, you know, we've not necessarily, you know, done what we should be doing for our rural areas. In a lot of ways, you know, we support a lot of efforts even internationally that we don't do domestically. And, you know, I see the rural areas of our state as having, you know, so much potential, especially now, you know, in the internet age when it's possible for people to work from anywhere and want to have a certain quality of life. But again, we haven't invested in that infrastructure, so we don't have high quality broadband internet in rural areas of the country. And I think that nowadays it's not only a communications problem, but it's an education problem because there's so much education delivery over the broadband internet now. That's a health problem because of telemedicine. Obviously, it's a commerce problem because so much of our commerce is transacted over the internet. So this is, to me, the rural electrification issue of our time.
oh, that's a good way of putting it.
Well, because, you know, they made the same arguments 100 years ago when they said, you know, well, we don't want to run electricity out to all these places because it's expensive and nobody lives out there, and, you know, we don't want to do it. But, you know, Roosevelt made it happen.
Dale Bumpers of Arkansas made it happen in Arkansas.
Yeah, I mean, it was definitely an effort that, you know, needed leadership to have, you know, occurred. But nowadays we would never think about not extending electricity somewhere. But we're doing the same thing around broadband when broadband is just as essential right now, and it's going to be even more essential as we go forward. And so, you know, we need to make sure we're attending to that. So that's, you know, something that I've worked on in the legislature as well as now at Winrock. And, you know, there's just so many more things we can do to promote, again, entrepreneurship and small business in our rural communities.
I've never thought about the internet as part like in comparison to electrifying rural areas, but it's exactly like that.
It is. It's the same thing.
And when you were talking earlier, I was like, why are Winrock spending all their money on other countries? Why don't they just do it right here? So I'm glad to see that they're doing that. So in January 2013, you said, or in 2012, you said you were still working at Oxford magazine, and you ran for representative positions. Why?
Well, you know, it's interesting because at the time I'd probably gotten as far away from thinking I would ever run for office as I ever had at that point, because I was so into my career and running the business of the magazine and all of that. But, you know, the seat where I lived was coming open because of term limits. And there were some folks that encouraged me to run. And when I got to thinking about it, I mean, for me, what I love about public service is what I love about all the things that we've been talking about. It's the ability to do good for your community, the ability to scale up an idea. You know, to me, I can't live in a place and not want to make it a better place and not want to, you know, create more opportunity for others. And to me, you know, public service is one of the best ways to do that.
So you had, I went to your website and I looked at your real results page. And you have things that you've done. Ethics reform is biggie. Jobs and entrepreneurship, we talked about. Energy, government transparency, education. What do you want to talk about? Which one are you most proud of?
Well, I'm proud of all of it. I mean, one thing, so just so I can tell your listeners, if you don't mind, so the website is sabinformayor.com, SABINFORMAYOR.com. And she's talking about the real results thing, which you can click on at the top. And what I'm proud of, first of all, is that, you know, I came into the legislature in the minority. It's actually the first time the Democrats have been in the minority in 138 years. And my first term, it was 51-49 in the House. My second term, it was 64-36. And now in my third term, it's 76-24. So I'm in a super minority now. So all throughout there, I was working in a minority, yet I was able to pass all of this significant legislation that you were talking about that you can see on my website. And I'm proud of all of it because it all is, again, part of creating more opportunity for people in the state. And, you know, whether it's, again, you know, creating a new energy economy, whether it's, you know, making our government more transparent and more ethical, or whether it's making it easier to start a business or, you know, kind of grow a business here in the state. I mean, that's really what's been motivating me. And I think when you have good ideas and you can work well with other people and you can convince them of the merits of those ideas, and you can get stuff done no matter what party you're in, and all of that.
You've been known for being able to work across the table on these important issues, which you just talked about. I had some quotes somewhere about how you were written up as the up-and-coming freshman in the House. So how are you able to do that? Why can you work across the aisle and nobody else can?
Well, I don't know if anybody else, I mean, I think there are a lot of people who can, I mean, to be honest with you. I just think, you know, a lot of it is just about having the patience, again, to listen to other people, to not always think that you have all the answers going into it. I mean, you can do your research and you can be prepared, but you also have to be willing to be flexible, and that's how our system was designed. But I do think, you know, a lot of it, like you said also, is just the hard work. I think people respect you when they see that you put the time and effort in, and that, you know, I always tell people when it comes to the legislature, but also everything else I do, I never regret that extra meeting or that extra phone call, because sometimes that's how the deal is done. You know, so I think sometimes people get tired of working on an issue because it gets frustrating, and, you know, they think, oh, if we can't just come to agreement right here, then let's just throw our hands up and walk away. But, you know, there's some of these issues, you know, I had to meet, you know, many times with people until we got to the point where we could make it happen. But then we did it and we got it done, and that's what we're here to do.
What committee are you on?
Well, right now I'm on the State Agencies Committee, you know, in the House. I also serve on the Joint Budget Committee. So.
And so your work you do at your real job is out in the Delta, mostly.
Mm-hmm.
But the work that you do at the legislature is you are the 33rd district is Hillcrest, in Little Rock. It's Hillcrest, Leewood, Briarwood, Hall High, Capitol View, Stiff Station, downtown, and the state capitol.
That's true.
So they're not really, they don't overlap really.
No, not at all. In fact, I mean, I represent probably the densest, most urban district in the state.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, but I don't know. I think if you have kids, you know, you don't love one kid more than the other. I think I love, you know, the rural part of Arkansas, and I love the part that I represent here in Little Rock. And that's another thing that's, I think, important about working in that environment, is understanding both. You know, I think our state has a history of there being a divide sometimes between Little Rock and the rural areas. And sometimes Little Rock actually gets the short end of the stick because, you know, there are more rural representatives than urban ones. But Little Rock doesn't do itself any favors sometimes by trying to throw its weight around. And what I'm looking forward to when I'm running for mayor is having a more cooperative and collaborative relationship with our federal representatives, with our state elected officials, and our legislature, and our county elected officials, and saying, what can we do to all help each other? Because, you know, if Little Rock does poorly, it makes the state look bad. And Little Rock certainly doesn't want to be an impediment to good stuff happening in the rest of the state, so why don't we all just figure out a way to work together? And I've gotten a lot of great feedback from everybody, from our U.S. senators, our U.S. congressmen, our governor, my legislative colleagues, our county officials. Everyone is excited about it. So are the other cities and counties around us. You know, cities of Conway and Benton, Bryan, Lonoke, Cabot, Mayflower, they all are like, we want to work with Little Rock. But I think we need the leadership in Little Rock that can build those relationships like I've done in the legislature and get things done.
Let me tell everybody that you're listening to Up in Your Business with me, Kerry McCoy, and I'm speaking today with Senior Director of U.S. Programs at Winrock International and Arkansas Congressman Warwick Sabin, who is running for City Mayor of